We'll start the way we do most Sunday mornings with a 30-minute meditation period, so you can get yourself settled into your place for that. We can begin by just inviting a sense of relaxation into the system. Not a demand, but just an encouragement, invitation. And an experiment to see what happens when we just invite the system to be relaxed. And we can see how natural it is, even with a simple invitation like that, to come into presence, to feel something, to be here with the energetic movements of the body and the heart. And to learn to work with them, to not resist what's already here. To learn to feel, to be embodied. Appreciating the difficulty of presence, the challenge of it. But also understanding that practicing is worthwhile. No matter what happens, it's worthwhile. Just to practice presence. And we're willing to be here with the movements of the heart and body, the emotions, the sticky places, even the resistances. Because intimacy with the way it is a good idea. It's where the heart's capacity for courage comes from. by coming in contact with these sticky places where it feels hard. But we don't jump right there. We begin where it's easy. Remembering that it's possible to relax, even slightly, that our systems know how to do that. And it's natural to feel. Our systems know how to do that. All experience coming and going. Everything moves. There's nothing to be afraid of. Just being connected with the currents of life. Currents of body, mind, heart. It feels like this right now. This is moving. This is not permanent. And it feels like this right now. Let's continue in silence now. Feel free to take a minute to stretch your legs if you'd like. Go, yeah, thanks, Ryan. You can go ahead and turn them up. My old eyes will appreciate it. A little bit more. Yeah, there we go. Thanks. It's good to be back here with you all again. Hey, morning. Hope y'all are, hey, Katie. Hope you all are staying warm. It's interesting Minnesota weather, pretty typical, isn't it? I mean, typical in that it's everything. Warm, cold, sleet, snow, rain. So we'll start off with just a couple of announcements. One is that Winfricky will be here next week teaching this group, and then we won't have an in-person component on the 29th of December because the center will technically be closed for the year in retreat, but Mark will be teaching that online only. So if you want to join in by Zoom or YouTube, please do. And then if anybody is interested in cooking for the year in retreat, we are still looking for some folks to do that. So you can either let me know or you can email gabe@commongroundmeditation.org if you'd like to do that. So we've got 20 people out at the retreat center and about 25 people practicing here at the city center. So it's nice if you want to contribute that way. Folks from those retreats will do most of the cooking, but it's always been a nice tradition at Common Ground for the community to support people who are doing retreat practice that way. And it's nice to bring you in. I'm at the tail end of a little cold here, not COVID, and I feel great mostly, but I just thought you can probably hear it in my voice a little bit. This is an N97, so it's going to do its job. So I feel a little nervous this morning. I want to give a talk on compassionate action, or we might call it What We Learn from Tears and Laughter, which is the subtitle of one of the books of poetry by Nikki Giovanni called A Good Cry. Sometimes when important Dharma teachers pass away, you might have noticed if you listen to Dharma Seed at all, any of the talks there, you might notice that sometimes when important teachers pass away, other teachers give talks that are more of a tribute to them. Eric Kolvig passed away this summer, and along with Irina Weissman were the first two teachers to lead a specific residential retreat for the LGBTQ community. And when Eric passed away, several Dharma teachers gave tributes to him, which were quite beautiful. Just a way of honoring their life. And Nikki Giovanni, I would call her a cultural icon and brilliant human being, passed away, I think, Tuesday morning. And she was one of the most influential teachers in my life. I can honestly say that. We've been close for a long time, although she didn't really know it. Yeah. But I've been a student of hers since my early adulthood. And I've learned so much that mostly this morning I just want to say thank you. And just I want to give this talk on compassionate action because her life really exemplified that. But not because she specifically told anybody what to do, although I think she'd be happy if people listened to her. But because she did so many other things that were more valuable than that, right? Which is what the Dharma is all about. It gives us the tools to kind of engage our lives in ways that feel most meaningful and most beneficial for ourselves and each others. They're not the Dharma is not really not telling us what to do. And compassionate action is sometimes a phrase that goes together, compassionate action, but it's really not needed, the action part, because compassion itself is an expression of the heart that cares, and is naturally embedded in compassion is this instinctual call to do something about it, right? A call to do something about what hurts. Yeah. And being human is a difficult thing. Life is hard. And it's supposed to be that way, actually. It's where we learn and how we grow. And one of the things that I've gotten from Nikki over the years is that she's not afraid. She wasn't afraid of contradictions. She wasn't afraid of contradictions in her own work. And I'm not going to try to analyze her work today. I'm really just going to make this connection, this Dharma connection, and express my love and appreciation for her. But I think she would say, and has said, that she doesn't really go back and read her previous work that much, because she is an expression of growth, and is willing to let the expression that comes forward in this moment speak for itself. Which is such a beautiful thing about living in the present moment, right? And there's so many ways that we can learn how to live in the present moment. And so it's good for us to shake up these ideas that we have about practice that make it more simplistic than it actually is. But to be willing to use our whole lives for the purpose of learning in every way that we can. And inherent in compassionate action, or the movement of compassion, is this willingness to do what we can in the moment that we can do it. And I think that's how Nikki lived her life. I heard her say once that she wrote back. I know she didn't do social media. She didn't even do email, which is amazing to me in and of itself. That she lived to be 81 years old and held true to that. Right? But she said that whoever wrote her a letter, she wrote back every person. Yeah. And I actually sent her something once, and she did send me a letter back, handwritten, signed it poetically, Nikki. It was after meeting her in the airport once, which she was very cordial and talked to me for a long time, wandered through stores, sat at the gate. And so just this willingness to do what we can do, to be touched by life, so that what comes forward, by being touched by all of life, the wonders and the sorrows of life, right? The love and the tears, is so authentic. It's a willingness to offer whatever gifts of the heart are available now, wherever we can. She said she never denied a selfie either. If somebody wanted a selfie, she said, "Why the hell not?" Which I find that's to be so generous with the busy teaching schedule and speaker circuit and all of that. So if you don't know Nikki Giovanni, a wonderful poet, activist, deeply relational being, historian. She wrote many, many books. I'll read a couple. I'll talk a little bit about compassion from a Dharma point of view, and then hopefully intersperse some of her poetry and other things I've learned from her along the way. But you can Google her and find lots and lots and lots online, or read her, buy her books. And she wasn't just one thing, which I also loved. She was both playful and accessible, and she said her job as a poet was to keep falling in love. And so she talked about the hardest things, right? The things that are so deeply real, and racism, and through the history of slavery in this country. And she made many connections like this. And she also never failed to talk about cooking and falling in love with an autumn morning, or, a conversation with a friend or something like this that we can all relate to, which is one of her great gifts. Playful, thoughtful, full of love and a wonder for life. A truth teller, a deeply spiritual person. She always gave credit to people. She wrote a whole book called Acolytes, which are just tributes to people. I always read the acknowledgments before I dig into a book and the dedication. Does anybody else do that? Yeah. Because I think it paints a beautiful picture of not just a single moment, but all the moments that have come together to influence this particular offering, right? And she did that so well. So dukkha, or this, what gets often translated as suffering, or these moments of tension, the human experience of, that we all know, let's just say that, the human experience that we all know, right? And we don't have to call it suffering, but we can learn how to apply lots of different words to the experience that we know as struggle. Yeah. And in a dharmic sense, what we struggle because life is hard, and we are ill-equipped to relate to life in the most beneficial ways. Yeah. And so part of what we are here to do as human beings is to keep learning from the struggle. And we learn that it's not personal to be ill-equipped, it's just human to be ill-equipped. The mind is the way it is. This mind is deluded. We get confused easily. We make all kinds of errors. We don't even notice that we're making errors. We spin stories about those errors. They become our habits and our personality traits, and we live our life through them, right? And then we complain about other people doing bad things, and at some point we realize we are those other people. Yeah? Because our minds are doing what we don't want other people's minds to do. Yeah. And some of the common ways that our minds make these mistakes is by, all kinds of ways, but in a dharma sense, it's like we take things to be deeply personal, and they're actually not. Experience is just a coming together of causes and conditions in a single moment that express itself like this. And those moments, when they're fed, they just gain momentum, and they express themselves in movements, like movements of love. We have beautiful movements of love through history, through our families. We have ugly movements of hatred through our society, through our families, through our communities. And it can feel so, they feel so personal, and that kind of personalization can actually stop us from doing something about it, right? Because the mind gets hung up in different places, and it can actually impede the flow of action, right? But compassion is actually, I would say, an expression of the heart that is free. Compassion itself is the heart that's willing to be touched by suffering. It's willing to be touched by struggle. We may not know all that we can know or will know or about how that struggle came to be, but we can know that we feel it. And when the heart is willing to feel that, it's a really courageous, open heart. And that heart is unencumbered by any of its defensive habits. Any of them, right? We can name a whole bunch of them, but maybe we don't need to. But we can explore them. Like, what are this heart's defensive habits? Yeah. And those defensive habits are there for a reason. Like it protects the heart in some way, those defensive habits. So we're not trying to demonize those habits of, protection and the heart that wants to just avoid feeling, and so we just move to fixing. We all know that one, right? Don't want to feel this, and so I'll just problem solve it to try to avoid feeling it. Or the heart that wants to avoid it altogether, the heart that goes numb, shuts down, the heart that is enraged, until we realize, well, that hurts. It doesn't help. So we learn how to harness this energy of compassion, the heart that's willing to be touched, so that being touched and what comes next, the action, is a flow, is a movement where nothing gets stuck. It's like I'm touched by life and I feel this feels like a good move. Nikki would say, this is a good idea. This feels like a good idea. It's just a good idea. It's just a good idea to fall in love, for example. Right? It's a good idea to find some joy. It's a good idea to appreciate people in all their complexity because they teach us something. And when we don't have resources, then the sting of life, the struggle, the difficulty, dukkha, it can really wear us down, right? And we can feel this when we start to feel worn down by life. So what we do is learn to just trust that this compassion, the heart that's willing to be touched, is natural. And we just keep looking for it, we keep encouraging it, we keep strengthening it through our relationships, through our capacity to feel joy, through our capacity to fall in love, to our capacity to appreciate, to strengthen those skillful qualities of heart and mind. It's what allows the heart to be soothed when it's under-resourced. There's a wonderful story that I've heard Nikki share before. She was friends with many other cultural icons, Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, James Baldwin, and Nina Simone, to name a few. And she would tell stories about how she and Nina Simone were actually quite close. And how Nina was one of those people that you didn't have to say a lot when you were with her. That sometimes she just needed you to be there in silence as a friend. And I found that really touching to hear her talk this way. And like when the heart trusts compassion, there's a lot more creativity there, right? When we're caught up in taking it personally, like, why aren't they talking to me? Why isn't she? What can I do to fix this? It isn't really letting it in. The heart really doesn't have as much space to be creative and go, oh yeah, maybe silence is the best medicine right now. Let's just drink coffee together. That's how I can be a support, right? That's how the movement of compassion can express itself right now, just in presence. I have too many flags to read, but I'll pick a few good ones. This reminds me of what I'm trying to point to here about dukkha and compassion. This is called At Times Like These, a poem she wrote for Maya Angelou. She says, at times like these, we measure our words because we are measuring a life. A friend was not lost, nor did she transition. She died. We recognize a good life was led, a generous heart ceases to beat, a hearty laugh will no longer be heard. We measure not the depth, but the width of compassion and passion and dreams. We place our love gently on the flowers that cover her, under the clouds, that embrace her into the earth, that owns her and now reclaims her. We will miss her spirit, her demands, her hopes for us, and therefore herself. At times like these, we are sad. We gather, we comfort each other, yet still, at times like these, we properly cry. Feels like the movement of compassion. Yeah. One of the things I think, Nikki did for me for so long is to just point to the interconnectedness of life in this way. Yeah. She often used stories of family to make this point, I think, but it's also a deeply Buddhist point to be made, that life is interconnected. We don't see that often, but life is interconnected. In every moment just to think about, we have all these people here who have lived lives, deep and meaningful lives and been touched in all kinds of ways, and that have led us all to this very moment of sitting together or on Zoom at Common Ground. It's not just one thing. We wouldn't be here without all of that. Right? And here we are together creating a community. And every one of our presence makes a difference in that. In this way, we could say that wisdom is really the reality that life is interconnected. In this way, everything we think is mine belongs to the nature of causes and conditions, or sometimes we just shorten that to say nature. Or we could also say it belongs to us. Not me, it belongs to us. All the habits that we swim in collectively belong to us, right? We can learn to recognize this deep wisdom in lots of ways. Sometimes the thoughts in our mind, they just come up and we go, where in the hell did this come from, right? This memory of something that happened 20 years ago, or something that I don't think I'm bothered by, but now the mind wants to obsess about it for the next 30 minutes. Well, who knows why that came from? Or an emotion that comes out of the blue. I have a magnet on my refrigerator that says, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. But does it? Not really, but it is wondrous, how the conditions are just supporting a movement right now. So we can ask ourselves, how did we get to where we are? Is it alone, or because of people and all the support and all the tough lessons? The I really doesn't make sense when we think about it like this, does it? So it's important that we bring this understanding, this wisdom with us into all our engagements. Otherwise, we take life personally. And that personalization is what undercuts habits of hatred and ill will, right? Just explore this on your own. We don't want to believe that our hearts are contributing that, but it does. And I'm a serious student of Buddhist practice. I can say wholeheartedly, and I'm humbled by the moments that the mind justifies ill will. I'm humbled by that. And sometimes don't wake up right away until it's gone on a little bit too long, irritation or complaining, and I go, oh wait, sweetie, this is that right here. This is contributing something to the world in this moment that I don't want to contribute. So it can be hard to bear the reality of sensitivity through what's sometimes called the 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows, and even the animal world is hard to bear. Like I watched a hawk standing over a squirrel, just like that it killed, just like I dare you to come close to my food. I was like, oh yeah, it's like sweet little cuddly creature, my dog or my cat or whatever is a predator. Yeah, and it can be hard to bear that. Right? But we can also learn to appreciate what seem to go together, the wonder of the interconnectedness of life and the heartbreak of it. Right? Another quote from Nikki, she said, a lot of people refuse to do things because they don't want to go naked, don't want to go without guarantee. But that's not what's got to happen. You go naked until you die. This is migrations from bicycles. Migrations. When the sun returns to the Arctic Circle from its winter rest, the grasses sprout, seducing the winged and the hoofed. Polar bears and their cubs must flee before the ice breaks up, although others begin a northern journey. The snow goose flies from the Gulf of Mexico to mate and birth her young. 2 million Mongolian gazelles move over the tundra where each gives birth at the same time, defying the will of predators who would consume the gazelle's future, though only, of course, to provide nourishment for their own young predators. Let's not judge too harshly. Salmon swim upstream, jumping falls, and grizzly bears, grasshoppers, and grizzly bears. Salmon swim upstream, jumping falls, and grizzly bears. Grasshoppers, ignoring the advice of ants, make music to celebrate winter's end. Monarch butterflies, leaving the safety Zihuatanejo, forge north, beginning the longest winged journey of spring. With only the hope of warmth and the promise of grasses, they unflinchingly face hunger, thirst, predators, winds, rains, and certainties, as would I for you. Go naked. So the relationship between wonder and heartbreak. We can wonder at the way lawful things come together, like the grass grows when the conditions are right. Isn't it beautiful in the springtime? Although maybe hard to imagine right now. Yeah. But it is wonderful, wondrous, when we see the trees sprouting leaves or life poking through the earth. And we go, oh, how did you make it? I always wonder that. How did you make it? Yeah, this cold winter. But we can bring wisdom into our heartbreak too, to the wonder of life and to the heartbreak. We aren't pretending that terrible human behavior is in any way good. The heart is willing to be touched by life, and the movement and expression of greed, of hatred, of confusion that's become our own in the way of our stories. We aren't expecting ourselves to get close to and, embrace Buddhist practice isn't about that. We allow ourselves to be heartbroken by what's heartbreaking. And we're not expecting ourselves to give every person who's dangerous or a hug. That's not what compassion is all about. It's about being willing to be touched by that and for the heart to break over like, wow, this is how it is being a human being, right? It's like this. And we try to understand it so that we can participate skillfully without collapsing or giving up or giving in. Nikki would often say, like, I have words, so I use words. That's what I have. That's my offering back to the heartbreak. She wrote a good cry because she had a seizure, and her doctor had a good reason for it, but she thought that she needed to learn to cry. She was really, for a long time, grieving the death of her mother and others. And so just to allow the heart to be touched in this way. Right? And it's really the only way that we learn. We learn through the heartbreak, not because we've avoided it. So the question is really not how we can be perfect or do it right or avoid the pitfalls of heartbreak, but it's about recognizing what gifts we have to offer when the heartbreak occurs. How do we support the healing? Wisdom can often be there to support the healing and allow us to have access to the gifts that we do have. Maybe it's words for Nikki, maybe it's not for someone else. This is from a good cry too. It's called the introduction for Tim O'Brien. It is the introduction she gave for Tim O'Brien. Sometimes you see or hear something that intrigues or disturbs you, and you go talk to that person to see if you can help. Sometimes you are made aware of something that you know you alone cannot change. So you contact your congressman, write a letter to the editor, or maybe just get a stiff drink and try to forget it. Sometimes, though, you understand you cannot make the tragedy go whole. You cannot make the hurt heal. You can do nothing but embrace the best within you. And you write a novel, a song, a play, a poem, a short story. You can do no more than witness the things they carried. Your heart applauds going after Casciato. You remind yourselves and others, if I die in a combat zone, these things are relevant to you. You write because it is the honorable thing to do. You write because you seek the words to help all of us understand. You write because you are Tim O'Brien, and that is what you are supposed to do. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present the incredible Tim O'Brien. I mean, I'd love somebody to offer an introduction of me in that way. Not that you wrote, because I don't. But because I did what I could do when I could do it. I heard a talk by Ajahn Sucitto in which he was discussing, some of the many relevant tragedies and things that we all care about, like the war in Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan, Burma, these places, worldwide struggle. And he said, we're not supposed to call bad things good things. These are bad things. These are not useful. They're not helpful. They're not beneficial. These human behaviors, they flow in movements like this. And he said, what I can do now is teach. I can do this. But if I were there and I thought I could do something else, I would do that. I would do that what I thought I could do. He said, I'm here, and so I'll sign petitions. And he was really encouraging us to participate, to do what we can do, to call our congressman, perhaps, as Nikki was suggesting, to do what we can do. And we can all do something. There's something we can do. Oh, probably children are here. Close? They can come in if they want to. We can do what we can do, right? And if we want a life, compassionate action, I think it really points to how the goal that we have is really the means that we have. The movement of care that moves through us is really the means to the life that we want to have. I want to read two more. See if I get it in there. Summer storms. The clouds like my grandmother carry a load they can no longer support. Grandmother saying, "Pass me not, O gentle Savior." The clouds, though, crackle their lightning and thunder. There are those who say we should run inside from the storm, but that would be like leaving grandmother at the kitchen table alone and sad, as she thinks of her daughters and it rains. Nikki wrote a book called Standing in the Need of Prayer. And it was really a response to the Million Man March. And the question that some men had that was like, will I be alone if I go? Will I show up there and I won't have anybody else around me? And what she said is that somebody needed to say, we love you. So she wrote that book as a way of saying, we love you. And I'll end with this one. This is called How to Save the World in 100 Words, something she wrote for the Oprah magazine, but which I also find really generous, that when a magazine asks you to write a poem or submit a poem, you write a new one. Not just submit one of your poems, the millions that you have. For me, how to save the world in 100 words. For me, it is the realization that I cannot save the world. The world is neither time nor money. For me, it is that thing in front of me, the man in prison for a horrible crime who has become my brother, my neighbor's son who talks football to me over the fence, the yellow jackets who have made their home by my deck, all the things I say I don't have time to do, but really don't have time to don't do. For me, it is the joy of being alive. For me, it is the living. I clocked this in at 99 words. I wonder what I missed. She said that often. I'm not trying to change the world. I'm trying to not be changed by the world. Stay close to your values and invite them to move through you. I know that's what I'll be doing. So let's sit together at least for a few minutes. The kids will come in probably less than 5 minutes, less than 4 minutes. Just let the silence wash over us and invite whatever's here lingering to just percolate a little bit. They're here. Oh, that was short. Come on in, kids.